"You're such a slob. There's no way you're my kid. Get lost, you pig," yelled Bob, and I stepped in to protect Luke. "If you won't acknowledge Luke as your own son, I'll take him in." Days later, when the two found out that Luke had been on TV, they came to our house. "Luke, come home with us," they implored. To them, Luke retorted, "Who are you guys?" "I'm Katherine Johnson. Ever since I lost my husband a few years ago, I've been living alone. Living alone in a big house was lonesome. Having no particular hobbies, every day was unbearably dull. However, there was one thing I looked forward to. That was seeing my grandson, Luke. Seeing my adorable grandson, Luke, was the only thing that brought me comfort. My son Bob and his wife Michelle ran a nightclub together. It seemed to be flourishing, and the couple always seems busy. The two had a baby after several years of marriage. Apparently, they wanted to have a girl and make her the star attraction of their club. Even before the baby's gender was known, they bought tons of baby girl products, holding high hopes for a girl. However, the baby turned out to be a boy. The disappointment of the two upon knowing that it was a boy was profound. Once the baby is born, you'd think they find it endearing regardless. That's what I optimistically thought, but it didn't go that way. Bob and Michelle showed no interest in the baby they had brought into the world, nor did they seem to care much for him. Even his name wasn't given much thought by the two. Fed up, I presented a few options, and from those, the couple chose the name Luke. The couple continued to show little interest in Luke. The two were determined to have a girl next time, but they never had another child. Michelle gradually began to harbor resentment towards Luke. "All our plans got messed up because you are not a girl. It's all your fault." Michelle seemed to have such misplaced hatred towards him. Moreover, led by Michelle, Bob too began to adopt a cold attitude toward Luke. If only I had intervened at that point, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. Eventually, Michelle stopped making meals for Luke. She'd leave a $5 bill on the table every day before heading to work, not returning until the early hours of the morning. Luke spent the long hours from evening to night alone. Just imagine how daunting it must have been for a young child to wait alone for his parents' return. With the money Michelle left, Luke had been buying his meals at the convenience store. Still a young boy, Luke didn't consider things like nutritional balance and would often buy sweets and potato chips to eat. Furthermore, there were times when he would eat convenience store meals that were about to be discarded. A child going to the convenience store alone daily is inevitably noticeable. A sympathetic convenience store worker would secretly share some food with Luke. Thanks to this, even on days when Michelle didn't leave money, Luke was never without a meal. By the time Luke was in 3rd grade, his weight had exceeded 150 pounds. This was the result of his unhealthy diet of sweetbread, convenience store meals, and sweets every day. Bob and Michelle seemed displeased with this. Ever since Luke had put on weight, the two had been verbally abusive towards him. "Look at how fat you've gotten. Get a grip. You're not my child, you're just a fat burden. Get out, you're in the way." When I learned that they had said such things, it felt like my heart would burst. I wonder how Luke felt hearing such words from his father. Worried about Luke, I occasionally visited his house to check on him. From Bob and Michelle's tone, I had a hunch they were starting to resent Luke. I visited their home to confirm that they weren't doing anything terrible to Luke. One day, sadly, my fears came true. "There's no way a fatso like you could be my child. Get lost, you pig." As soon as I opened the door, I heard Bob shouting. I rushed towards the noise and saw Luke lying on the floor. Judging from his hand on his cheek, Bob must have hit him. "Bob, what are you doing?" I rushed over to Luke, pulling him towards me to shield him from Bob. Looking at Luke, he gazed back at me with a vacant expression. His look resembled that of surrender, and I regretted making such a young boy wear such a face. Bob seemed unaware of my arrival, his eyes wide as if they were about to pop out. Do you understand what you're saying? Luke is genuinely your child, I yelled at Bob. Although Bob is my son I gave birth to, I couldn't comprehend what he is thinking at all. Even if Luke was not the daughter he had hoped for, I could not believe the treatment he was giving to his own innocent son. If you don't acknowledge Luke as your child, I'll take him in. Both Luke and Bob were taken aback by my sudden words. From there, the conversation moved rapidly. Bob and Michelle, seizing the opportunity to rid themselves of their problem, accepted my proposal eagerly. Thanks, Mom. Now I can concentrate on my business, right, Michelle? Yes, thank you so much. On the day I took Luke in, the two of them said this with the brightest smiles I had ever seen. That smile made me sad. I fully understood how little they cared about Luke. I had been observing, thinking that it would be best for Luke that he was with his real parents, but I strongly regretted not taking him in earlier. On our way back to my house, Luke said, I'm sorry, I'll grow up fast and move out. What on earth was he saying? When I asked him, Luke replied with a stoic expression. You regret taking me in on a whim, don't you? You look angry all along. I look angry? Luke nodded sadly. No, I regret not doing this sooner. I should have let go of my notion sooner that you must be happier to be with your real parents. Aren't you annoyed with me? Luke looked at me with anxious eyes. I tightly hugged Luke. No way! I know for sure that I love you more than those two. Luke seemed uncertain of how to react. He was freezing like a statue for a while, and then he mumbled softly, This is the first time I've been hugged. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I swore to myself that I'd make this kid happy no matter what. From that day on, Luke transformed into a lively and cheerful kid. He started laughing more than I could have ever imagined, and he also became more talkative. Every day when he returned home from school, he would help prepare dinner while excitedly sharing the day's events. You seem very cheerful today, Luke. Did something good happen? Do you know? Something funny happened today. While we were singing in music class, a sparrow flew into the room. The teacher was in such a frenzy. I was wondering why, and then she almost started crying, saying, I can't handle birds. Remembering the event, Luke chuckled. He looked so cute and lovable that my heart melted. Since he started eating healthy meals at my place, Luke's physique became more standard. Although he maintained his childlike charm, his contour sharpened, making him look quite handsome. He shyly told me that the girls at school started talking to him more. Luke seemed happy every day, and I was relieved to see him that way. The day of the first parent-teacher conference since I took Luke in came. Luke's homeroom teacher made a suggestion. Why don't you have him take an IQ test at the hospital? This suggestion made me anxious. I felt like they were saying there was something wrong with Luke's intelligence. Is Luke falling behind the others? As I asked this, the teacher hurriedly waved his hands. No, it's the opposite. From my experience, I believe Luke may be gifted. I was a bit puzzled by the unfamiliar term gifted. According to the teacher, gifted refers to children who possess innately higher abilities compared to their peers. The teacher handed me a piece of paper. This is a graph showing the change in Luke's grades. At a certain point, Luke's grades have shot up significantly. Sure enough, the graph showed a sudden upward trend. Looking at the dates written on the x-axis, I realized that the change happened right after I took Luke in. I was surprised at how sudden it was, so I asked Luke, have you started going to cram a school or something? This increase is unusual though, but that wasn't it. Apparently, Luke had been adjusting his results to avoid doing too well. I didn't quite understand what the teacher meant, so I turned to look at Luke, who was sitting next to me. Noticing my gaze, Luke began to speak. At my old home, if they found out I was doing well in school, they didn't like it. They'd say I was being cheeky and I'd get hit more than usual. Luke shrugged his shoulders. So, during tests, I would intentionally leave answers blank or get them wrong.
I actually knew all the answers, though.
Luke smiled smugly.
Now there's no need for that, so I just take the test normally. It's so easy it's boring. Even just reading the textbooks lets me understand everything in class, which isn't fun. I want to study something more challenging.
Luke sighed deeply. I was momentarily worried that the teacher might feel offended by his words, but my worries were eased when I heard the teacher laughing loudly. What do you think? If Luke is gifted, we might be able to provide support that suits him. Why not get tested at the hospital? If it's for Luke's benefit. With that in mind, I decided to take Luke to the hospital over the weekend. From what I can tell, based on his behavior at school and home, as well as the results of his IQ test, it seems that Luke may be gifted. The doctor spoke clearly. Luke's IQ was significantly higher than average, which surprised me. I had no idea Luke was this smart. No wonder he finds school so easy. To fulfill Luke's desire for more challenging studies, I decided to hire a private tutor for him. The tutor is a veteran who graduated from a prestigious American university, and he understands Luke's characteristics. Luke was pleased, saying it was more fun than school. He passed both the English and Chinese proficiency tests with the highest grade at the tutor's suggestion. When the tutor posted about his proud student on social media, it spread rapidly. Luke became the talk of the town, and we started getting interviews from newspapers and television stations. One day, while spending the usual time with Luke, the doorbell rang. Oh, are the reporters here already? There was still about 30 minutes left until the interview time. I opened the door expecting the reporters and was surprised. Long time no see, Mom. I've come to get Luke. There they were, Bob and Michelle. What brings you here? When I asked, Michelle flashed a bright smile and replied, Dear mother-in-law, thank you for caring for Luke until now. From now on, he will live with us. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What on earth is this woman talking about? You must be joking. Luke has an interview soon. I'm very busy. Please leave. Upon hearing the word interview, Bob and Michelle's eyes lit up. So it really was Luke. We saw it on TV. Our son is truly remarkable. Their faces turned towards each other, excitement bubbling between them. And then they blurted out an outrageous idea. If Luke comes back, our shop will be secure. Beside Bob, Michelle was nodding fervently. If we get customers who come to see Luke, our sales will go up. In the long run, we could even leave the management to him. That would make life easier for us. I was astounded at the self-serving thoughts of the two. After claiming that Luke isn't their child, they show up to take him back when they realize how talented he is. A child is, Luke is, not a possession of his parents. Don't you understand? I had reached the limit of my patience. Just as I was gearing up to give them a piece of my mind, Luke appeared behind me. Seeing Luke, Bob and Michelle broke into smiles. Their smiles only stoked my irritation. However, their smiles were shattered by a single phrase from Luke. Who are you guys? Luke asked, staring at the two straight on. They looked bewildered. Who are we? We're your dad and mom. You're our beloved child who I suffered to give birth to. Michelle's words made me feel sick. How dare she call him her beloved child? Just as I was about to retort, Luke smirked and said,
My only family here is my grandmother. I don't know you people who abandoned me.
He stated this firmly. Luke, that woman is your grandmother, not your mother. Come back home with us. Bob tried to persuade him gently, but Luke glared at him.
My home is here with my grandma. Unlike you, she's always shown me love. You abandoned me, and now you want to reclaim me because you think I'm useful? You're not my parents.
It was the first time Luke had ever raised his voice like that. Bob and Michelle cringed at his outburst. Bob, visibly irritated, tried to grab Luke's arm. Just as I was about to intervene, a voice called out from behind Bob. Is what he said true? Did you abandon him? Journalists began to gather around, their faces solemn. They had come to interview Luke. It was already the time of our appointment with them. Reporters surrounded Bob and Michelle. They circled Bob and Michelle, firing off questions at them. Later, this interview was broadcast on television with the sensational title, "The Sad Past of a Genius Boy, Confronting the Parents Who Abandoned Him." The impact was immense. The couple was lambasted on social media, and their business received numerous angry calls. "How could you abandon him just because he wasn't a girl? Don't try to manipulate your child for your own convenience." On top of the angry calls, crowds of people apparently gathered to see the faces of these terrible parents. Needless to say, business could not operate normally under these conditions. In desperation, Michelle reached out to her parents for help, only to receive a cold response. "You reap what you sow. Deal with it yourself. We have no intention of helping anyone who would abandon their child." Bob and Michelle were universally scorned and abandoned. The two of them were reportedly upset, crying out, "Why is this happening to us?" Hopefully this incident will be a wake-up call for them. Although, given their current attitude, the prospects seem bleak. After that incident, Luke and I quickly moved away.
I want to cut ties with them. I can't stand going through this over and over.
I respected his decision, and we moved far away to prevent the two of them from ever approaching Luke again. We would have sought legal measures if we could, but it seems it's hard to sever ties with biological parents, even if they are adoptive. In Luke's new school, he made a good friend, who seemed to understand him well. Luke would bring him home, show him his homemade programming, and happily explain his points of interest. While I find Luke's interests a bit hard to follow, his friend seems to understand, listening attentively and nodding as Luke explains. From time to time, they would be engrossed in a discussion about programming. Seeing Luke so happy always made me feel glad we moved here. Thanks to his new friend, Luke has been able to live freely and happily every day. I hope they continue to get along well and support each other.
Your son made me pregnant. Excuse me? Pay $30,000 as alimony. When I picked up the restaurant's phone, I was told that with a young woman's voice suddenly. She was utterly one-sided in the conversation and not even giving her name. I completely underestimated. That must be a prank call. So I never expected that this call would lead to such a mess. My name is Melissa Brown. This may sound self-flattering, but I run a popular restaurant somewhere in New York City. We have been featured on national television and in magazines, and thanks to that, almost every seat for lunch and dinner is booked every day. However, because of being famous, nuisance calls and aggressive sales pitches increased. So I got quite sloppy with this call because I thought it was just another prank. But when I was told over the phone to my restaurant that got pregnant, I was actually taken aback, and I could hardly understand what she was saying. I do have a son, but the thought of him getting someone pregnant seemed absurd. Yet this prank call with its shocking accusations intrigued me. I decided to listen to her story for a bit, out of fun. I had an abortion. What are you going to do about the wounds on my body and soul? Pay for the surgery too. First off, if I may ask who I am speaking to, even when dealing with prank calls, one of the challenges of the service industry is having to respond politely. It would be a nuisance if our conversation were recorded and exaggerated with false information being spread around. I'm a customer at your restaurant. Is that the first thing you have to say to me after your son hurt me? Your family lacks both common sense and compassion. I find it hard to believe my son would do such a thing. My staff in the kitchen and at the counter glance over at me as they sense this isn't a usual dinner reservation call. I smiled and waved at them to make them feel safe and assuring them that everything is all right. Your son assaulted me on a dark street. And you recognized him in the dark? Of course. But are you sure it was my son? Don't play dumb. I'm absolutely certain. It was your son who lives with you. I've been so scared since then. I even can't go out alone. What are you going to do about this? She started detailing how the assault had happened. I think you might be mistaking my son for someone else. But this seems like a serious matter. Can we meet in person to discuss it? Most people who make prank calls like these tend to shy away from meeting face to face, so suggesting a meeting is a good way to get them to back down. In the beginning, I was merely entertaining her call out of fun, but as it seemed to be dragging on, I proposed the meeting to end the call soon. You saying, meet with the criminal's parent? How dare you suggest that kind of thing to a victim? But I'd like to verify your story in person. Are you saying I'm lying? That's not what I mean. To be honest, I wanted to say, you're lying, aren't you? But I held back. Then she started berating me and saying, I can't believe a person like you is a business owner. Why don't we meet and talk about this anyway? No matter how many times I suggested it, she continually refused to meet. I see. So what do you want me to do? Pay me alimony, $30,000. But it's a case of mistaken identity anyways. And also, I can't afford such a large amount of money. You can pay. I know your business is thriving. Pay it or I'll sue you. Even though my business is thriving, it's just a small place, and $30,000 is a large amount of money, and I don't even intend to pay. Are you sure you want to involve the police? I don't mind. At my unhesitant response, the woman fell silent for a moment. If my son truly did such a thing, I should hold him accountable as a parent, but I don't think he did. You're pretty confident he didn't do it, huh? Maybe you should have some doubts about your own son. I would believe it if there was evidence. Do you have any? Evidence? I'd be troubled if you asked me for money without any proof. There was silence on the other end of the phone as the woman seemed to be contemplating something. If there's no proof, I'm hanging up. I said that and trying to end the call. Then, hold on. If there's evidence, you'll pay the alimony, right? Well, I would consider it. Then wait, I'll bring the evidence. With that, she hung up the phone almost as soon as she had finished speaking. Owner, are you all right? There's no problem. It's just a prank call. One of my employees, Mr. Murphy, voiced his concern, so I reassured him like that. There's no way she has any proof, so I don't expect she'll call back again. But I have an uneasy feeling that she might barge in and cause a scene at the restaurant. In the evening, while preparing for dinner, I had completely forgotten about the phone call. Mr. Murphy ran up to me, holding a manila envelope in his hand, with his face as pale as a ghost. What's the matter? It's not like you to run in the restaurant. Owner, this came. What he handed me was a letter. Ms. Melissa Brown, I was assaulted and impregnated by your son. Please transfer $30,000 as alimony. Written below were the bank transfer details, and the recipient's name was Karen Williams. Mr. Murphy was pale and disturbed because he was the first to see the contents of the unsealed and unsigned letter. Calm down. But you know my son, right? Hearing this, he seemed relieved. There was something else in the envelope. I pulled it out, and it was a pregnancy test. What's that? This commotion attracted the other employees. All of them seemed taken aback. Could it really be the owner's son? Some employees gave me a contemptuous look, but they were quickly convinced when I explained. I put away the things that had been sent on my desk and returned to my usual work. A few days passed without transferring any money, but during this time, there was an unsettling incident. Owner, this came again. Mr. Murphy came with the manila envelope in his hand and looking fed up. I see. Check the contents and put it away in the usual place. Recently, these harassing letters have been dropped in the restaurant's mailbox many times a day. Are you planning to run? Pay up. The owner is a parent of a criminal. Her son got a college girl pregnant and didn't even apologize. The owner of this restaurant is a heartless and cruel woman with no sincerity. Irresponsible, overprotective, toxic parent. It's your fault your son became like that. Take responsibility. I'll make sure no customers come to this restaurant. It's for the good of the world, for the good of the people. I wonder what would make customers stop coming to a restaurant. Like those restaurants where they put that greasy, black, and disgusting thing in the food. I wouldn't go there again, that's for sure. The content escalates progressively, and the last part is practically a threat. Thankfully, no claims have been made that anything is actually in our food. But the constant anxiety that we might be set up is exhausting. Amid all this, something caught my attention. Well, again, a vacant seat increased at lunch. The number of customers was just gradually decreasing. Yes, it's unusual. Today, we even had 2 tables empty. My thoughts went out to the poor ingredients waiting to be prepared in the kitchen. Owner! I looked up at Mr. Murphy's call to see him heading my way with his laptop. Look at this review site. On the laptop screen, the latest reviews were filled with harsh, slanderous comments. Bad customer service. They don't listen to the customers, especially the owner, who seems to be getting full of herself after appearing on TV and in magazines. The food is getting worse. The soup taste was way more plain than the last time I visited. I saw an employee drop a piece of meat before grilling and sneak it back. Every single day, poor reviews were posted, causing our star rating to plummet. I realized that I was shaking with anger. It's unacceptable. Why should this restaurant, which we've worked so hard to build with the intention of pleasing our customers, be wounded by such baseless accusations? Are the preparations progressing? An unfamiliarly low and cold voice involuntarily slipped from my mouth. Yes, they're almost completed. Upon hearing Mr. Murphy's response, I couldn't help but smirk. It's been a week since we discovered the slanderous comments on the review site. Since then, the number of customers has continued to dwindle. When I stepped out into the dining area, Mr. Anderson, a regular, was sitting at the counter next to a young woman. Mr. Anderson, thank you, as always. It's tough for you lately, Melissa. When I greeted him, Mr. Anderson offered me words of consolation. Well, this job is my lifeline. I smiled and replied. Mr. Anderson shook his head sympathetically then. You're strong, especially considering your son's predicament, but don't lose hope. I'm on your side, Melissa. We'll support your son as he atones for his actions. What? I was taken aback and couldn't understand what he was talking about. Well, I noticed this place is quieter than usual, so I was wondering what happened. Then this young lady here kindly showed me a webpage about this restaurant. With that, he gestured towards the pretty woman in her early 20s sitting next to him. I really feel for you. I love this place, so I thought I'd come here more often to help out in any way I can. Come to think of it, I recalled seeing this girl in the restaurant quite frequently recently. Excuse me, but what's written here is a misunderstanding. The regulars here were wondering why the place has been so empty recently, so I explained it to them. What? I doubted my own ears and trying to make sense of what she was saying. I mean, it isn't sad not to know the truth. Besides, I thought the owner would be happy to know that people like me and Mr. Anderson still come to this place. You've been spreading online rumors, which we're not even sure of, to our patrons? I unintentionally raised my voice, forgetting all about formality. Wow, it's scary. The internet says the owner is a terrible person, and I thought it wasn't true, but it seems you really are like the parent of a man who assaulted women. I suggest that you should apologize if you think you did something wrong. She twisted away from me. Her movements were as if she expected me to punch her, even though I had not raised a hand. Miss, that's not a nice way to talk. Melissa's probably tired from all the things happening. Mr. Anderson defended me, but that wasn't the point. I was about to explain that the fundamental issue was different, then suddenly her bag fell from the back of her chair. It must have moved while she was twisting and turning. Despite my simmering rage towards her, my service industry instinct kicked in, and I moved to pick up her bag. But then I saw it. Karen Williams? The name written on the student ID card that had fallen out stopped me in my tracks. No worries. I'll pick it up myself. She hurriedly got off her chair to pick up her bag and ID, but I got there first. Hey, give it back! But it wasn't a mistake. That name was the one on that letter with a pregnancy test, which wouldn't even serve as evidence of anything. So it was you. I've been looking for you, Karen Williams. Ah, I must have swapped it with the friends by mistake. I'm not Karen. Your face and the one on the ID are the same. Interesting. So you're a student at Central College? No, I'm telling you, you're mistaken. Beside her, who started being flustered, Mr. Anderson was clearly puzzled and having no idea what was going on. I'm going to sue you. My words spoken in front of a few scattered patrons caused everyone in the bar to turn around. What? What did I do? I believe you're the one who knows really well what you did. Since we're all here, why don't we let everyone hear? I looked around the bar. It was mostly filled with regulars. While it's nice to have regulars, it meant that almost no new customers were coming in. I couldn't help but feel furious about this young woman disrupting our business. Let me start. Are you the one who called claiming my son assaulted you and impregnated you, demanding alimony? I glared at her and pressing her for an answer. Yes, that's me. I'm the one your son assaulted. Seeing that there was no way to deny it anymore, she admitted it surprisingly readily. What? You want to embarrass me in front of all these people? This could backfire, you know, considering the reputation of your bar. She crossed her arms defiantly and completely brazen. Her attitude only served to fuel my anger further. Mr. Murphy, bring everything over. I instructed him to hurry up and bring me a laptop from the store's office, along with a stack of envelopes and documents that could be about 4 inches high. Was it you who kept sending harassing letters to the store over and over again? I read some of the letters in a loud voice so that other customers in the store can hear. Pay up or run. This owner is a criminal's parent. Her son impregnates a college girl and doesn't even apologize. Poor souls being forced to eat food from this woman's restaurant. I'm sure I'm going to make customers not come to the store. It's for the greater good. Some were covering their mouths at the harsh words among the regulars who heard the content. This is completely threatening. There's no evidence that I sent this letter. Maybe some outsider who heard the rumors sent it just for fun. As she was desperately making excuses, I silently opened my laptop and presented her with the screen of another review site. Some of you here may have seen this, the defamation on this review site. You did this too, right? I'm saying, where is the evidence? Are you all right in the head? Evidence, evidence. You seem to love evidence so much, even though the one you presented is such a mess. I showed the first received letter and the pregnancy test to Mr. Anderson, who was nearby. This is the pregnancy test she brought as evidence. What do you think? Isn't this red line just a marker? Even my old eyes can see that. The customers who are listening started to buzz. But this might not prove that I was assaulted, but it doesn't prove that I'm wrong either. No matter what happens, she is insisting and shouting angrily that she is the victim. I was assaulted by your son. He said it himself. It's disrespectful to doubt that. The customers are whispering in hushed tones and seems not sure whom to believe. Since I, the victim, am saying it, it must be absolutely true. She started to cry as if to attract sympathy. Well, I'll prove it then. My son? He's 3 years old yet. Upon hearing this decisive fact, she let out a small, "What?" as if deflated. My son may be a bit rambunctious and strong for a 3-year-old, but there's no way he could assault you. No way. I know you have a big son. You live together, right? I even have a picture. I heard you talking about dinner. Saying that, she pulled out her smartphone and showed a picture of what looked like a young man talking to me at the back door of the store. Oh, isn't that Taylor? See, you do have 2 sons. Perhaps regaining confidence from correctly naming the person in the photo, her tone increased. That's not correct. I immediately denied what she said. Then, who is this person? Don't tell me he's your lover, having an affair with a younger guy, and then that guy impregnates a college girl? What a scandal! Not only is your store done for, but your marriage, too. To her triumphant words, I revealed something. This person, this is my niece. Your niece? Yes, and actually, it's a girl. I explained that my niece is tomboyish and is often mistaken for a boy, even as an adult. She's a college student, and as she boards at my place, I ask her to cook dinner and pick up my son as a form of rent payment. If you need evidence, want me to bring her in person for you to check? I told this to her, who stood there shocked and seemingly unable to hear me. By the way, I've already gathered all the evidence about the harassment letter and the posts on the review site. Evidence? No way. She seemed like she might collapse any second and turned to face me weakly. I've already consulted with the police and my attorney. I explained step by step the preparations I've made with the help of Mr. Murphy, one of my employees. The first piece of evidence was a letter from her with fingerprints that matched those on the harassment letter. All posts on the review site were confirmed to be from the same person after a disclosure request. With no way out, she sunk to the floor as she drained. You were just saying that it's better to apologize quickly if you've done something wrong, weren't you? She mumbled something while looking pale and looking down, but I couldn't make out whether it was an apology. I will contact the police about you. I'll inform your parents and your college as well. Be prepared for a lawsuit for emotional distress damages. No, please don't do that. I'm still a student. Please spare me. You may be a student, but you're an adult, over 18 years old. You will take responsibility for your actions. I can't handle that. Please, stop. Subsequently, I filed a criminal complaint against Karen Williams for defamation and business obstruction, as well as for damages to the shop. Apparently, she had always been a big spender, buying brand bags and clothes on credit, and ended up committing these crimes after she was unable to make her payments. As a result, she was expelled from her college. This incident even made the news, and I've heard that now she is the one who has been receiving harassments after her personal information was exposed. Through my lawyer, all the slanderous posts on the review site were deleted. The uproar unexpectedly turned into a positive result as it cleared up the misunderstandings among my regular customers. Now, the number of customers has returned to normal. While the incident did deter new customers, there were almost no regulars who left, even despite all the lies that Karen had been spreading. There's no doubt that it was pleasing to know that her claims weren't taken at face value. Moving forward, I aim to continue running the restaurant to meet the trust of my customers.